Hey, fellow horror fans. This is Troy Escamilla, the director of Party Night and Mrs. Claus, and you are listening to Anthony T's Horror Show. Enjoy.
Welcome to Anthony T's Horror Chamber. I'm Anthony T. In this episode, I will be joined with Philip Perron from Dark Discussions Podcast, as we're going to talk about the 10 best genre films 2018. There's also part 2 of my look back at 2000. But before I get to that, here's a couple of news items. First, Scream Factory recently announced a bunch of titles that are coming out in April. First, on April 2nd, they will be releasing a couple of IFC Midnight releases, Pledge and Rust Creek. Then on April 16th, they will be releasing Superstition, Grave of the Vampire, and the Manadao. Then on April 23rd, they will be releasing Eli Roth's The Green Inferno, and the Boris Karloff Bela Lugosi collection, which includes The Black Cat, The Raven, The Invisible Ray, and Black Friday. And then on April 30th, they will be releasing The Brain. Out of this list, the only ones that I'm really looking forward to are The Green Inferno, as that'll be a much better edition than the one that was released by Universal when they released the film a couple years ago. And The Brain, which is a film I kind of saw at the end of it when I was young, but I never had a chance to watch the film in full. But with David Gale in the film, that's definitely a must watch for me, because I'm a big Reanimator fan, so I'll be definitely picking up those two titles. And finally, in New England convention news, CT Horror Fest recently announced that Danielle Harris will be joining them at their 2019 convention, which takes place at the Nantucket Event Center on September 14th in Nantucket, Connecticut. Tickets haven't been announced yet on when they will go on sale. And that's the news. I'll be back with my guest Philip Perron from Dark Discussions Podcast as we talk about our top 10 films of 2018. Have a horror podcast that you want to promote? Have a geek podcast you want to promote? Well, if you answered yes to one of those, then here at Anthony T's Horror Show, I'm looking to have your commercial here on my show. If you're interested in having your commercial played on my show, you can contact me at anthonytshorrorshow@gmail.com. And remember, support indie horror.
Hey guys, this is Steve and Christina. I'm the founder, owner, creator, and host of Super Retro Throwback Reviews. Are you looking for the best movie reviews, music reviews, video game reviews, and Comic-Con coverage all around? Well then look no further. Definitely check out Super Retro Throwback Reviews on YouTube and our new audio podcast, the new and improved Super Retro Throwback Reviews audio files version 2.0 on the following media distributors: Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.
Class is over, John. Time for something new and improved.
Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror Show. I'm here with Philip Perron from Dark Discussions Podcast, as we're going to talk about the top 10 films of 2018. How are you doing today, Philip?
Good. Yeah, I'm all excited about this. I came up with my list is only genre films. So I'm not doing like dramas or romance or anything like that. So it's all genre related, and I think I weeded it down to a pretty good core of 10 genre films. And when I say genre, I'm talking about horror, fantasy, thrillers, science fiction, mysteries, grindhouse midnight movies, and maybe even some art house films. So a foreign language and whatnot.
Okay, now since you're my guest, I'll let you start with your number 10 film.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, my number 10 film is a film called Gemini. It came out technically at South by Southwest in 2017, but was released to the general public 2018 in March. It is a horror. Well, it's not a horror. I'm sorry. It's a mystery thriller. But it really is more than that. It's more of like a Quentin Tarantino type cult film. Basically, it has a lot of language that is similar to how Tarantino would write his films, and that's the reason why I like it. The reason I found out about this film was because of the lead actress, Lola Kirk. Lola Kirk, on my Halloween Boutique Psychotronic Review podcast, which is another podcast that I do, the last episode was basically I did a bunch of films that were LGBTQ friendly because it was the LGBTQ month when I recorded the episode, so I decided to do a bunch of art house films related to that, and one of them was called AWOL. And Lola Kirk starred in that, and she's an awesome actress. And so I decided to search for other things she's done, and I saw that this film came out in 2018, and I went and I watched it. It's basically about her playing a person that basically is like the publicist for a famous actress. The actress goes missing, and she's the main suspect. And so it's a mystery thriller, basically, and it's a really good film. My
number 10 film is Red Eye. I had pretty much like 3 and maybe 4 films that I was considering that I'm going to put as number 10, but Red Eye topped them all because I felt that this film was very good. The fact that a first-time filmmaker, I believe he was like 18 when he made it, Tristan Clay, and I was so amazed at how professional the film looked. I was amazed how the gore effects were very good and looked very horrifying. Plus, he also had a very good screenplay, which I believe he wrote with star Destiny Orndorff, who was also very good in the film. The film also features a great performance from Orndorff and Heather Dorff, plus the fact that this film really was chilling, especially right up to the film's end and its final end credits song. That's why I think Red Eye beat out pretty much 3 or 4 other films as my number 10 film.
Now, where can people find this film? Is it on VOD?
It's on VOD and DVD, as terror films usually don't release films on DVD. But a couple months ago, Terror Films released Red Eye on DVD, so you can get the DVD or VOD of that film.
Nice. Yeah.
And I think it's also on Amazon Prime as well.
Oh, okay. That's good news. Yeah, that's really good news. For the prior film that I mentioned, Gemini, that is you can find anywhere as well, disc, Blu-ray, VOD, and so forth.
My number 9 film is Bang of the Living Dead. It has one of the weirdest titles of the year, but it's definitely one of the best films I've seen all year. I thought the direction from Matt Grove was very good. I liked how his screenplay balanced drama and comedy, along with the horror. The film has very good gore effects, plus the fact that the performances in the film were very good as well. You can find this film only on ScreamTeamReleasing.com, as I think they've done a great job this year with all their releases, as them and another label that's heavily present in my list, Dread Central Presents, I think really did a great job in bringing these films onto Blu-ray this year. I hope to see more of that in 2019. So, what is your number 9 film?
My number 9 film is called Elizabeth Harvest. This film is a film that actually came out South by Southwest early March of 2018, but made it to VOD mid-year, but the disc didn't come out until December of 2018. It's basically a cloning sci-fi horror type film. Stars Abby Lee, probably best known for her film... what the heck did she do? She did that film called, I'm getting it right here, Neon Demon. She was one of the lead actresses in Neon Demon.
Oh yeah, that's great.
It sure is. It's a great film. This film here, she's the lead. She carries the film pretty much on her shoulders, though she has a pretty decent supporting cast, including Carla Gugino, or however you pronounce her name, and Syrian Hines. Both, everybody should know them if they saw their faces, whether or not they know the names. Basically, it's about a woman who lives in marries this guy, goes to this mansion, and he basically says, don't go into the one room, and of course she goes into the one room, and then there's a big twist after that. It's very... reminiscent of basically Argento coloring, so there's a lot of reds and greens, things like that. And I felt it not only was a good horror film, but it felt very much like a techno thriller, even though it is basically a biological thriller. So all in all, I recommend by me. Elizabeth Harvest, it's called.
Okay, now I'll let you go with your number 8.
Sure. Number 8 is another film that I came to pretty late in the year. This film's called Who's Watching Oliver? This is a horror film, straight horror film, serial killer film. It has a number of folks that, well, not necessarily a number of folks, but a fairly decent amount of people in the film that folks may know of, if anything. The lead actress, for example, her name is Sarah. It's a very difficult name to say. Let me look it up here. Sarah Malakal Lane, her name is. She's been in a number of genre films, including Sunchoke and Jailbait and various other films. This film here is basically about this guy that's, I guess, a little disabled, and he lives in Thailand. And his mother, he Skypes every night, and his mother is basically a serial killer sociopath who tries to force him to do her will. And so he's in a foreign nation, very alone. He's quote-unquote a mama's boy, and he goes out based off of what his mother tells him to do, and basically find victims. And he's trying to fight through his neediness to be loved by his mother and to get out of being a quote-unquote serial killer. Very high recommend. It's getting a lot of buzz on a lot of blogs recently. It's because it's a film that a lot of people found out about late. Who's Watching Oliver? Pretty much found anywhere on VOD or disc.
Now, my number 8 film is a film I kind of wished I watched in theaters, because I kind of forgot about it when it was in theaters, and it was A Quiet Place. The film really is terrifying. I have to admit, the direction in this film is just great, by John Krasinski of The Office, and he does a great job with the way he directs the action, and the way he gets the performances that he needs, considering most of the movie has no dialogue at all. The film also has a very good performance from Emily Blunt, and it's definitely a film that I kind of wished I wanted to see in the dock, but I never had the time to see it when it was in theaters, and after watching this film I was kicking myself for not seeing it in theaters, as this looks like a film that needed to be watched in a theater. So A Quiet Place is my number 8 film, excuse me. Now, my number 7 film is a film that I watched just very recently, and I have to say, I really wanted to move this higher on my list, but after looking at my top 6, I felt like I couldn't do it, but I really, really wanted to do it, and that is Upgrade. It's the film by Leigh Whannell, if I'm pronouncing it right. If not, I apologize.
Whannell.
Yep. Whannell, the guy who one of the co-creators of Saw. This was a very intense film from start to finish. I would love to see more from Leigh Whannell in the future. I really think he can be something in the horror genre, whether it's in a screenwriting capacity or directing, as every scene has kind of an intense feel to it, and the ending of this film is just so shocking that you kind of don't see it coming, but let me tell you, this will shock you. And you can't say that with a lot of films these days. And that's why Upgrade is my number 7 film.
Very good choices. All right, so my number 7 film is a film I saw late because it actually got a late release in the year of 2018, and that film is called The House That Jack Built. This film is a film by Lars von Trier. Everybody should know him from various...
Yeah, I know him. Antichrist and
Melancholy.
Melancholy.
And Nymphomaniac and a few other films, The Dancer in the Dark and whatnot. He's been around for years. He actually wrote the screenplay as well. The film stars in what is one of the most powerful performances of the year by Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon plays Jack, who is basically a serial killer. And he narrates the film along with a individual that basically named Verge that we don't really get to meet until near the end of the film, so I won't explain who he is. But he talks about how serial killing is an art form in a sense, and that basically folks are turned off by his art form. And a lot of people are saying that this is actually a wink and a nod to critics who dislike Lars von Trier's films and consider them awful, just as murders would be by a serial killer, and so it's like almost like a kind of a symbolism of his own career. The film is fairly intense. The acting's great. It has some pretty damn good cameos by people such as Uma Thurman and Riley Q. And it is a film that I would recommend anybody to see, though they should know that being a Lars von Trier film, it will have a weird art house feel to it, especially the ending, which is definitely much different than the rest of the film. So my 7th... Did I say my 7th? Yes, my 7th rated film of the year is Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built, available on VOD.
Yeah, I think IFC Films got in trouble with this because they kind of screened the unrated version of this film beforehand, and now they're in trouble, I believe, with the MPAA. I think I read a story on that.
That's possible because it did get one release with an uncut version, a one-day release, and that is supposed to come out later in 2019. However, the release now that people can see on VOD is the R-rated version. However, I think the issue is with the MPAA is that the uncut version would have probably qualified as an NC-17, and I guess they didn't want to have an NC-17, at least at theaters, and they didn't want to release it as the unrated film either, because at theaters, unrated basically means NC-17 anyway. So they had to change it up and were forced to release the VOD, at least for the first 3 to 4 months, as the cut version.
Yeah, but I also think they released the unrated version, I believe, for
That's
one
correct.
night.
Absolutely.
And then now they're in trouble with the MPAA, which... I don't get.
The problem is that they should have just released it for the one night unrated, and then there wouldn't have been an issue. But I think they tried to release it as a rated film, but with the wrong rating for the one night, and with an R rating when the cut version should have been the R rated, not the release they did. So that, I think, is the issue, is that they released the uncut as an R rated version when they should have just released it for the one night as unrated, and then they wouldn't have had any issues.
Why don't you go ahead with your number 6 film?
Okay, my number 6 film was a surprise. It's a film that I had heard nothing about, and it suddenly appeared earlier this year on Netflix, and kind of blew me away. The ending, unfortunately, doesn't hold up as much as the rest of the film, though a lot of folks love the ending more than the rest of the film. I was the opposite. This film is called The Ritual. Netflix film. It was picked up by them in 2017 from Toronto International Film Fest. They beat out Lionsgate for the rights for the film, and then they put it and dropped it on Netflix early in 2018. Pretty much everybody probably knows about this film, so I mean, there's not much to really say about it except that it's awesome. The film is based off of a novel by a guy named Adam Neville, who is a small press author who's obviously had some success because they picked up his movie and it turned out to be a sensation. The film actually did get a cinema release in the UK because it is a British film, but in Netflix released it, and there was a big talk about it earlier in 2018. So no disc yet. Who knows if there ever will be, but definitely available if you subscribe to Netflix. Okay,
for my number 6 film, it's probably one of the craziest films of the year. It's also probably the most film you'll have an acid trip, and it's Mandy. Director Panos Cosmatos does a very good job with the way he directs this film, whether it's the way he handles the action scenes to creating some of the great visuals that this film has. Of course, the film also has the typical Nicolas Cage performance, but this works so well in this film. I almost even thought that was my best performance of the year until another film that I saw, which I'll talk about more when I talk about this film. But I thought that was very good. And I also thought the editing in the film was very good. The cinematography was very good. And the scoring was very good. And a film that I'll probably be rewatching soon. Because it's probably I would have to say it's one of those films where you probably need multiple viewings to get a sense of what's going on. But I like how it was structured and everything. And that's why Mandy's my number 6 film. Now, my number 5 film is a film that is high on everybody's list. Probably top 3, top 4. But my list only makes it to number 5. It's Hereditary. This is a film that I recently saw. This film has a great performance by Toni Collette. It also helped that Ari Aster's direction was very good. He does a great job keeping the action moving, even though this is one of those slow burn horror films. And the last act of the film is just insane. It really is scary and very intense, and it really pays off for all the slowness that goes on in the beginning of the film. The film also has some very good supporting performances too by Gabriel Burns and Alex Wolff, and that's why Hereditary is my number 5 film. How about you, Philip? Your number 5 film.
Okay, my number 5 film actually was kind of a sleeper in a sense, and yet it did get a theatrical release, and unfortunately I missed it, even though it did appear close to where I live. This film is called Thoroughbreds. It stars 2 hot and hip actresses, English actress Olivia Cooke, probably best known for her role as one of the leads in Bates Motel television show, and then Anya Taylor-Joy, probably best known for The Witch and was it Splice? No, what the heck? What was the one that M. Night Shyamalan directed last year? What was that called? Splice? No, it was Split. That's it. Yeah. So she starred in that as well. So 2 hip actresses. It's basically about Olivia Cooke, who's a fairly unadjustable, possibly disturbed individual who has really no friends, becomes a student for Anya Taylor-Joy, basically a tutor. She tutors her, so they're the same age. They used to be friends as children. They kind of drifted apart, and Anya Taylor-Joy lives in a mansion. Olivia Cooke lives in a well-to-do family, but not obviously as wealthy. And basically, Anya Taylor-Joy mentions how her stepdad she does not like, and Olivia Cooke's character suggests murder. And there's some big twists and turns throughout the film. It's fairly again, this is similar to Gemini in a sense that the dialogue is very much like a Quentin Tarantino film. So if you like Quentin Tarantino dialogue, this works for you. If you like thrillers, this works for you. Also, of a dark interest, it also is the last film of Anton Yelchin. His last starring role, or supporting role, I should say, prior to his passing. The film is directed by Corey Finley. It can be found on disc and VOD anywhere, and it is a high recommend.
Yeah, I've always wanted to check this film out, but never had the time. Hopefully, when I do my rewind of 2018, I'll find it on disc or VOD. Because that's film I kind of want to watch, but I just never had the time to pick up or find on VOD. So what was your number 4 film?
Okay, my number 4 film is one of the only films I saw multiple times this year, and I actually saw it twice at theaters. The director is a guy that I love. And the lead actress is one of my favorite lead actresses. And this film is called Annihilation, starring Natalie Portman and directed by Alex Garland. This film has awesome music, has awesome cinematography. It has an awesome director, as I mentioned. It has an awesome lead actress, as I mentioned. Supporting cast is damn good as well, because it includes people such as the great Oscar Isaac, but it also has Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gina Rodriguez, Tessa Thompson, and the Swedish actress Tuva Novotny. And it's a science fiction horror film. You could even actually call it somewhat of a nature horror film. And the ending has unfortunately caused, I guess, mixed results for some folks, but I was absolutely blown away by my first viewing of it, that I went back the very next night and watched it again for full price at theaters.
Yeah, I also saw Annihilation this year. It was a good film, even though I kind of felt it was a step down from Alex Garland's debut film Ex Machina, which is definitely a film people should check out. I thought the performances were good, but there was just something missing that really couldn't be on the level of his first film.
Well,
But still,
I would agree. I would agree with that. That Ex Machina is most certainly a better film as an entire feature-length film. But I tried my very hardest to look at this film as a standalone film without comparing it to his other work, and wanted to really just compare it to 2018 films. But I would agree wholeheartedly that Ex Machina was most certainly the better film.
Okay, my number 4 film is probably one of the goriest films of 2018. It's also probably one of the most outrageous horror films, and it's probably one of the most different kind of slasher films I've seen in like the last 5 or 10 years, and it's, you guessed it, Terrifier. One of the things that I loved about this film was Art the Clown, and the great performance that David Howard Thornton provided with that character, because I really like the way he makes his character very menacing through mimicking in his movements. It really brought something different to the slasher genre. And it also has, I think, probably the most goriest and most outrageous kill in 2018. I'm not telling you what it is, but I think I've seen a meme of it. If you've seen a meme of it, then that's what I'm talking about. It also has very good supporting performances from Jenna Cannell and Catherine Cochran, whom people might know from Return to Nukem Highs 1 and 2. It's just a very gory film. It's very intense, in your face, and definitely I think one of the better slasher films come out in the last 5 or 10 years. My number 3 film is completely different from Terrifier. It focuses more on the psychological side of horror, and this film is the only film to feature a guest on the show. As I'm talking about I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday at number 3, I managed to interview the director Mike Lombardo. Thought that was a very good interview we had. This film was just very good from start to finish. I liked how the way he gets his performances from his 2 main leads. I also like the fact that the ending of this film just leaves you in shock and horror. That really something you don't expect in a Christmas horror film. A film that will leave you in disbelief. It's really a great film. I definitely suggest you go to ScreamTeamReleasing.com and pick up the Blu-ray for I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday. It's really one of those films that really shocks you after the end credits roll. Have you seen that film yet?
No. Basically, the issue with that film is the only way anybody can see it is either at conventions, which I had an opportunity to, because the director was there to show it at the Scares That Care convention in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I actually went, but unfortunately it was being played at the exact same time that they were doing their auction, and I had to win my Taylor Swift autograph photo for my kids. So I had.
That's understandable.
Yes, absolutely. So I missed it then, and then the only other way to watch it since then is to watch it through the disc, and the disc is like $20-something, and I just haven't been able to get the urge to spend the money to buy it, because I'm hoping that it comes out on VOD later in 2019.
I'm hoping so too, because this movie deserves to be seen by a wider audience. That is the only thing I think that's lacking with Scream Team releasing right now is VOD. Even if they did just through Vimeo, you can at least get it out there to people who just want to stream the film.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think Vimeo, you can just release it directly without any in between, right? I mean, that's each Vimeo. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm kind of surprised that he doesn't do that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's the thing with the VOD with that company, but definitely Scream Team Releasing is a company that you should check out, because ever since their first release, The Bond, been hooked on this company. They've released some really good titles. I've already talked about Bond of the Living Dead. They've also released some other good titles like The Witching Season and 1031. So don't be surprised if we continue to hear more and more about Scream Team Releasing from some of the die-hard independent horror fans, because this is definitely a label that people should be checking out. I really hope this year they would put their films on VOD. I know The Bond finally came out on VOD through, I believe, Terror Films this year. So I don't know if Terror Films is their VOD distributor or just that one film. So I have no idea if this is going to be a VOD release for the film.
Yeah.
So what was...
No, I was just going to say that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it, and it would be at least now you can buy the disc through Amazon, because originally you only could buy it through that website for the distributor of the disc, but now it's available on Amazon. So at least the options are growing.
Yes, and I do agree. Amazon is a good way to go, but I would go. If you go to ScreamTeamReleasing.com, they usually will have autographed copies of the films for sale as well, which is another plus.
Absolutely.
Because you're helping independent film distributors.
Absolutely. Yep.
Alright, so what was your number 3 film?
My number 3 film is probably the best horror film of the year. It also stars my favorite actress, Emily Blunt, and you've already mentioned it, A Quiet Place. This film came hard and strong. I actually saw it the Thursday night preview prior to its actual full release on Friday. I had to write a review for Cinema Knife Fight, which unfortunately now is defunct, but I used to write for that website, and I had to go see that film quickly because I otherwise wasn't going to be able to see it later that weekend. So I went and saw it at 10 o'clock at night on Thursday, and that was a great time to see a horror film like this. Non-stop horror. You don't have a chance to take a breath at all. It literally blew me away how great of a scary film it is. Again, it stars my favorite actress, Emily Blunt, so that was a plus. And John Krasinski, her real-life husband, was the director, who I had never seen The Office prior to this film, so I had no idea who he was. I've since watched all 9 seasons of The Office on Netflix, and it's amazing how a guy like this, who has done a lot of comedy through The Office, was able to come out and make an incredible horror film. And to be honest, I think this may be his directorial debut as a film, not as a TV episode, but as a film. And all in all, he, Emily Blunt, and the kids that were in the film were amazing. One of the best horror films I've seen in over a decade.
I was never into the U.S. version of The Office, so the only time I knew of John Krasinski was an indie film called Away We Go back in 2009, which is a great film, but I've never seen the U.S. version of The Office, basically because I refuse to, because the British version of that show is just so great that I could not bear myself to watch the U.S. version. Oh,
it's high recommend. The U.S. version is absolutely phenomenal. It's the thing that basically made the careers of Steve Carell and John Krasinski, as well as Rainn Wilson. It is most certainly a television show that you should definitely see. It's just a great, great show. Even if the original is fantastic, This new American version of it is also fantastic, especially because of the cast.
Your number 2 film.
Okay, my number 2 film is technically horror, but some people say it's science fiction. I would call it both. And you also mentioned this film earlier today, or this evening, I should say, and that film is called Upgrade. Upgrade was actually the best film I saw, a genre film I saw all year, up until the end of December, which will be my number 1. But Upgrade, as you said, was directed by Lee Whannell. Also, he wrote it. This film was the exact type of film that I would want to see at the theaters, and I sure did, thank God. I love techno thrillers. I love cyberpunk, and of course this has horror as well. It also has good music because it plays Howlin' Wolf, and any film that has Howlin' Wolf in it gets an extra star for me. And the intensity of the action, it reminded me of the Dread film that came out a couple of years ago. And all in all, highest recommend. I rewatched it again on disc just a couple of weeks ago, and it still holds up. Lee Whannell is a guy I've been following since Saw, and he's just fantastic, and it's good to see that he got a directorial chance here. And the thing is that originally this was supposed to be a huge release, and for whatever reason, Blumhouse or whoever released it, I think it was Blumhouse. No, it was yeah.
I think Universal.
Well, it was Blumhouse Tilt, so it was their secondary group there. In other words, they have their Blumhouse and they have Blumhouse Tilt, and Blumhouse Tilt are the films that they think won't be successful for financially, not necessarily critically, and so it only got a limited release of like 1,000 to 1,500 theaters rather than the usual 3,000 that major releases get. And unfortunately, that kind of hurt its word of mouth until finally people were able to see it at VOD options, because I was one of the lucky few that were able to get to see it at the theaters.
Yeah, it's a crime that there's no bonus features on the Blu-ray.
True.
It's like, that's the only reason why I just purchased the VOD copy. It's like, why are there no bonus features? It would have been nice to at least see an audio commentary on it.
Yeah,
because I would love to listen to his thought process on it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's so much in this film that makes it worthy of hearing what the writer/director had to say and what he was trying to do. Because, and never mind the filmmaking, how he did the effects. You know, I mean, it's just fantastic stuff that I would have loved to hear audio commentary.
Yeah, it's amazing how he's come a long way from Saw, and quite possibly one of the worst films that I've seen in theaters, Dead Silence. Because that film is probably one of the worst films I've ever seen in theaters. Ever see that one?
No, I've intentionally...
Which he written for James Wan.
Right. I've intentionally avoided it because I've heard bad things about it.
I unfortunately did not take anybody's advice, and I paid for it. Like sitting there for 90 minutes, being bored. That film is so predictable, it's not even funny, which is sad. But thankfully, he and James Wan have rebounded from that film.
Absolutely.
Because that film could have been a career killer.
Absolutely.
Considering it was the follow-up film to Saw.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, because sometimes when your feature-length film does really well, especially if it's an independent film like Saw, and then you go off and do a second film and it bombs, sometimes you kind of just fade away.
Okay, now I'll let you do your number 2 film.
Oh, okay. That actually was my number 2 film, actually.
Oh, that was your number 2.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just...
No problem.
A little out of it.
No worries.
My number 2 film is a film that almost was my number 1 film of the year. This film, for a while, I kept saying to myself, it would take a miracle of a film for it to topple that film. But there was another film that overtook this film. But my number 2 film is probably the most emotional film I saw all year. It's a horror documentary. It was released by Dread Central Presents. And it's To Hell and Back to Kane Hodder's story. Now, this film is a film where it does a great job on focusing on Kane Hodder, the person. Not Kane Hodder as Jason, not Kane Hodder as Victor Crowley, Kane Hodder as a person. It does a great job going into his background when he was young, to some of the low points of his life, which are also some of the emotional points of the film, which I was moved to tears when he was talking about probably his most horrific accident that went wrong. It almost drew me to tears. I even still get choked up talking about this film. I never read the book, so I was totally surprised at some of the stories. And it really made me appreciate Kane Hodder more. And I think the director of the film did a great job focusing on that instead of being a film that serviced the fans and just goes into how many times he played Jason, how many stories from sets that he encountered when making the Friday the 13th films and the Victor Crowley films. I like it had a lot of realism displayed as a real documentary. I'm kind of surprised that it didn't get picked up by a major distribution company. But still, Dread Central Presents was the perfect home for this. And it's definitely worth checking out, whether on VOD or Blu-ray or DVD. To Hell and Back to Kane Hodder's story is my number 2 film.
So my number 1 film I actually saw in December. Basically, I crammed in about 2018 films at the end of December so I could get all the, at least 50 or 60 or 7 films for the year that were genre related down, so I could make lists for this as well as my other podcast, Dark Discussions. And one of the films that I saw was a film called Beast, simply B-E-A-S-T. That's a film from the UK. It actually played at Toronto International Film Fest last year. I mean, when I say last year, I mean 2017. But it actually made theatrical release in April of last year in the United Kingdom, and obviously straight to VOD in the United States because independent British cinema won't get a big release in the States. It's basically about a family, or specifically a girl that lives on Jersey Island, which is one of the 3 Channel Islands off the coast of France, but are actually part of England. And her family life is pretty bad. They're not abusive or anything, but they're kind of just not there in a sense. And her sister's kind of a jerk. So what happens is she bails on her birthday party and embarrasses her family, and she meets a guy and begins to date this guy. And while she's dating this guy, a number of murders occur on the island, and Jersey Island's a fairly huge island. It's not like a small island in a lake. This is like as big as like a county in the United States. And so, and yet there's like 3 to 4 murders that occur, and there's suspicion that it may be this guy that she met. But there's a big twist throughout the film, because the problem is we find out secrets about her, and then we also find out that she herself has her own various issues, and as a result you can I won't say what happens, but it's an interesting film. It's basically a psychological thriller. It's well done. It's has a lot of drama in it, and also a lot of not only human interest but also a character study of basically the lead actress character. And I would say it was probably the best film I saw of 2018. And since this is a genre podcast, the best genre film as well.
For my number one film, it was a film that I thought after leaving the theater that this film would be a classic 10 years from now, and it was also a perfect sequel to one of the greatest horror franchises. Yes, I'm talking about David Gordon Green's Halloween as my number one film of 2018. Going into this film, this was also my most anticipated film, but this was also a film where I was like skittish because of Danny McBride's involvement. I really didn't think the guy would be able to a really good horror film, because he's had more of a background in comedy, and plus it's David Gordon Green as well, who also has more of a background in comedy. But this film was just great. Jamie Lee Curtis was better as Laurie Strode, and I also liked the fact that this film focused more on Laurie Strode than Michael Myers just killing people, which is a huge plus considering half of the films, pretty much almost all of the film's sequels, minus 3, features Michael Myers killing people with pretty much very few storylines. But this is definitely a very good film. Has a nice twist too, which doesn't get overplayed, because I was literally scared once the twist happened that, oh my god, the Cult of Thorn plotline is coming, and that pretty much set this franchise on a downhill trend. Thankfully, none of that was in the film, but this is definitely a great film. Definitely a film I can't wait to check out once it comes out on Blu-ray. And it is why Halloween is my number one film of 2018.
You know what's interesting about the director? I never saw any of his comedic films or anything, even though you're right, he's known for that. However, his last 3 to 5 years, he's done kind of stepped away from comedy, and he's done a lot of thrillers and dramas, and films like Joe, which was a great film that, believe it or not, Nicolas Cage starred in. Was kind of a dark thriller. Was fantastic back in 2013. 2016, he wrote this film called Goat, which is another really great dark thriller that I would highly recommend. And then, of course, in 2017, he directed Stronger, based off one of the survivors of the Boston Marathon bombing, and that was rumored to be a potential Oscar film when it first came out, and still has a 92% great reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. And so, oddly, I had never seen any of his comedic stuff, but I've seen all his other stuff. So when Halloween was coming out and he was mentioned as the director, I actually was very happy about that, because my experience with this director was with his drama and his dark thrillers and not with his comedy. So it's kind of interesting, the perspective based off of how you know of him and how I know of him.
I wasn't worried more of David Gordon Green, but I was worried about Danny McBride's screenwriting, because the only horror credit that he has is, I believe, the last Alien film.
Oh, yeah, and he actually starred in that, too.
Yeah, and it's like, mostly he's known for comedy. There's like this point in the movie where he starts going into a comedic scene with the kid and the babysitter. Even though it's a great scene, I was starting to get a little nervous that, oh no, it's not going to turn into a comedy. Please don't. It really scared me that it looked like he was making that turn into more comedy-based horror, which would definitely not have worked with this tone. But thankfully, it was only that one scene. But it also, I think, was a kind of a refreshed moment in the film, because everything prior to that was like brutal, with scenes like Michael's escape, that was shocking. The whole scene where Michael takes, and then I'm going to go into little spoilers here, where Michael kills a kid in the car. That, I was like saying to myself quietly, what the fuck? It's like, you don't see this in a regular studio film. I was amazed that this film really went all at it in terms of brutal action and intense scenes. It also really helped that it also had to focus more on Laurie Strode, which really made the film very good, and really, I think, makes this a classic, in my opinion. Because if this was just another, Michael V. Laurie Strode film, it would have been pretty much the same Halloween film as 1978. I kind of not wanted to see that. Thankfully, it didn't. I hope they come back for the sequel. Because if David Gordon Green is not back for the sequel, I don't know what's going to happen. If it goes back to being this mindless slasher series of films, like the fifth film and so on. So, I really enjoyed Halloween. I can't wait to see it again. It is a really, really good film.
It is.
And I was shocked that this was handled properly. Because I was really expecting the worst going into it. Well, that is our top 10 of 2018. Now, before we end this, Phil, what are some of the films you're looking forward to in 2019?
I'm looking forward to, one of them is called Velvet Buzzsaw. Velvet Buzzsaw is directed by Dan Gilroy and starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Rene Russo, who, by the way, all three did the film Nightcrawler a couple of years ago together. So this is Dan Gilroy's follow-up to Nightcrawler. He's bringing in the same lead actor, and Jake Gyllenhaal, and his wife in real life is Rene Russo, and she also was starred in Nightcrawler as well. So she's in this film. This is a horror thriller. It takes place in L.A., and it has something to do with artwork, I think. And so I won't really go into any further. If people want to check it out, they can go look for the blurb on that. Also of interest is basically The Hole in the Ground. This is an Irish film, and it's basically A24's next horror film they plan to release after Hereditary and It Comes at Night. This is their next film, because each year they seem to release one big horror film, or at least what they try to make or considered big. This film is called The Hole in the Ground. I'm not sure how it will do, or if it will get a major release, just for the fact that it's an Irish film, and even though it's an English language film, unlike other nations, for whatever reason, foreign films, even if they are English language speaking films, usually don't do as well in the States as they would in other nations. Another film of interest is a film called Wounds. It's directed by British Iranian director Babak Anyan, who directed a film that was way overrated, in my opinion, called Under the Shadow a few years ago. But the thing that makes this interesting to me is the leads in this, and this is Dakota Johnson, Zazie Beetz, and Armie Hammer. And all three of them are pretty hip right now. And so I'm looking forward to checking that film out. It's based off a novella called The Visible Filth, which is supposed to be a pretty good horror novella. And there's a bunch of others, but those are three. I'll give you one more. We Summon the Darkness, and that one stars Alexandra Daddario. So I'm looking forward to that. I like her as an actress, but also it seems like it could be some sort of type of slasher type film that takes place in the woods, so that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I do like her definitely check out Malevolence 2 Breed.
Oh, yeah, that's a great film.
I think she's great. Yeah, the whole Malevolence trilogy is great.
Yeah, the second one, I seen the first and second, and the second one blew me away. That was a really good film. And that was actually the first time I ever seen her in any film or anything at all. And she was really good.
Yeah, it's like, I think one of the rare indie horror films that I saw in theaters, when they actually played indie horror films in theaters, because nowadays they don't do it in my area. So I'm still waiting to see Anna and the Apocalypse, if any theater in my area is looking for a film to book. But still, it is a shame.
Oh, there's one other film I wanted to bring up too, if I could, and that is a film directed by David Robert Mitchell, who directed It Follows. His new film.
Oh, yes, that's a great film. That was great.
It absolutely was. His new film, Under the Silver Lake, is a neo-noir mystery, and that is coming out in, I think, the end of April. And it actually got a showing at Cannes and got some pretty damn good feedback. And so, as a follow-up to It Follows, I'm most certainly interested in checking that film out.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know about this, because that was like the first time I heard about it. It seemed like he disappeared after It Follows. Now, at least he's coming out with another film, so that's good. Now, my 3 films I'm looking forward to. My first film is by a duo that I think is poised to have a big year, whether it's in the filmmaking world or in the comic world, and you might get, I guess, the Saska twins, as they're coming back with a new film called Rabid, which is a remake of David Cronenberg's classic. This is a film I haven't seen any trailers or anything, but I may have seen maybe a photo or two. And from what I heard, it looks like it's going to be very good. They also have a couple of comics coming out this year, too. One including a crazy Grindhouse-inspired comic, in which I backed on Kickstarter. And it's finally done, pretty much, because it took a long time to print this one, because all the censorship issues. And it's titled Kill Crazy Nymphos Attack. I have the digital copy, still haven't read it yet, but from that title, it looks insane. And they also hooked up with Marvel as well, as they'll be writing the new Black Widow comic. Saska Sisters are poised to have a big year, but definitely their film Rabbit is one of the 3 films I'm looking forward to seeing. My second film I'm forward to seeing is Rob Zombie's upcoming 3 from Hell film. A couple of weeks ago, he teased that Otis will be more nastier than the Devil's Rejects. I don't know how more nasty you can get with the character, but it's enough for me to sign up for the film. I can't wait to see how he's going to handle the events of the 3 Firefly clan after the fact that they pretty much been killed off in Devil's Rejects. But I guess we're going to find out somehow how they came back, which is going to be very interesting. This is one of those films where it could really succeed or really fail. I'm hoping it succeeds, because I really don't want to see the Devil's Rejects ruined because of 3 from Hell. So I'm hoping it's going to be a very good film, and hopefully bring Rob Zombie back to the forefront. Even though he's had a couple good films lately, there have been a lot of detractors for his latest film, for his past films like 31 and Lord Salem. And my third film is my most anticipated film of 2019, and it's It Chapter 2. I'm hoping if it's like the first one, it's going to be a really good film. I'm really hoping. And the way they cast this film gives me kind of hope, because they pretty much did fill it out with big stars, which kind of surprised me, because I was expecting a whole list of A-listers, but you get Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, and Bill Hader, and pretty much everyone else I believe is unknown. Bill Skarsgård is coming back as Pennywise, which he was great in Chapter 1. So I really cannot wait for It Chapter 2 to come out. It's definitely my most anticipated horror film of 2019, and one of the most anticipated things that I'm looking forward to in the world of horror in 2019.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm definitely looking forward to that one over Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary, in my opinion, looks like a complete disaster. The screenplay looks very similar to the original movie, and so I'm not looking forward to that one at all, unfortunately. But It Chapter 2 is looking pretty good, absolutely.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for Pet Sematary. I thought it was a good trailer. I haven't seen the original Pet Sematary.
You're missing nothing.
But it kind of, if I went based on the trailer for Pet Sematary in the original Pet Sematary, it doesn't look like there's much new to it. Maybe it's more darker, but that's about it. Now, really, one of the films that I was hoping to put on the list, most anticipated films, but I just can't right now, is the new Hellboy remake. Have you seen the trailer? Oh yeah, you don't watch trailers.
I try not to, yeah.
Okay, my thoughts on it is, it didn't wow me. It felt like Hellboy light. It just, there's something about it. I can't be sold on it right now. Maybe the fact that it looks a little lighter than the original Hellboy is part of it, but I'll probably see this anyway, because I've recently switched to a Showcase subscribe service, which is pretty much like Movie Pass, so I will probably check this out anyway. But right now, I'm really not looking forward to it. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm really hoping it's a good film. Because this, right now, looks like it could be one of my major disappointments in 2019.
Well,
I hope not.
I'll say three things about it, positive or negative. One is the director is a positive, because it's Neil Marshall. Neil Marshall, everybody knows from directing the classic horror film The Descent, as well as two of the greatest episodes of Game of Thrones, Blackwater and The Wall. So that's a positive. Another positive...
He also directed Doomsday.
Yep.
And Dog Soldiers as well.
Correct.
That's why I'll probably see it anyway,
yep,
because I'm a fan of Neil Marshall.
Sure. The other thing that's positive is that the screenplay is pretty much co-written by the originator of the character. He basically came in late into the game and rewrote the script. And so when you have the person that created the character come in and write the script, you hope that it would be very fair to the original theme of the comic book or graphic novel. The third thing of note, which some people are unfortunate and feel bad about, is that just like the first two movies, the Hellboy character has been changed, because in the comic book he has goat feet and has, you know, the legs that bend the opposite way, similar to like goats or dogs or whatever. While in this movie, just like in the original two Del Toro films, he has human feet and human legs. So I know some people are bummed out about that. But all in all, yeah, it'll be curious to see how it is. It's definitely had some trouble during production The last time we heard some big major release had trouble during production was It Chapter 1, and that turned out to be pretty damn good, so we can only hope.
Yes, but as long as it's not The Predator, I don't care. Even though I saw this film in the second-run theater, I felt like I was cheated, because that felt like more like a comedy.
Yeah, I haven't seen it because that has gotten so bad reviews and mixed reactions from folks. But that's an example of where the creator of the original Predator came in and actually directed that film, and it was terrible. So it shows that even if the originator of the character comes in to work on a film, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good, as we saw with the Predator.
Yeah, Shane
Black.
I thought he starred in it.
He starred, and he was the screenwriter of the original Predator.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep. Yeah, so he wrote the first film, and so the character is based off a character that he created himself. So that's why it looked really impressive when they brought him in to direct this film, because it's like, oh, they're bringing in the creator of the original film, or the original character, and sure enough, it was a bomb. And that's a shame, because Shane Black is a pretty talented guy, and I mean, he directed Iron Man 3, he's written Lethal Weapon, and he wrote The Predator. So, I mean, it's not like he's a boob.
Yeah, he's a good...
So it's just that he had a dud, and unfortunately, sometimes when you're too close to the character, it can sometimes be a mistake to be there, because you are just looking through it with a certain type of glasses that maybe if they were taken off, you would see, oh, I see what everybody else is telling me, but I didn't listen to them.
Yeah, but I really didn't think he needed to bring Fred Decker on board. I think that's what killed the screenplay. The fact that Fred Decker, who's known for pretty much Night of the Creeps and the Monster Squad, this film felt like a Fred Decker film, not a Predator film, with all the humor,
right,
and everything.
I agree. Yeah, there was. I mean, Shane Black has a lot of good dialogue, humorous dialogue himself. So as a result, I don't see why he needed to bring Decker in, because he himself could have done it. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, because I think that's what really hurt the film. As much as I like Fred Decker, I feel like he should not be near any franchise. He ruined RoboCop. Even though it's a guilty pleasure film, the third film really was bad.
Yeah, I avoided that as well. I haven't seen that one either, again, because of bad reviews.
Yeah, and that's probably the reason why you haven't seen Fred Decker direct another film since.
You're probably right, yep.
Well, let's just wrap this up. It was very nice having you back on the show, Philip. Now tell us where they can find you on what podcasts on Dark Discussions.
Okay, the weekly podcast that we have on Dark Discussions is the Dark Discussions podcast itself, and that is a weekly podcast that discusses a genre film weekly and basically critiques and reviews. Also, coming in about 2.5 months from now will be You Know Nothing, Jon Snow, a Game of Thrones podcast where myself and two of the co-hosts of Dark Discussions talk weekly about each episode of Game of Thrones as it is being aired. So each week we basically review and critique each episode of Game of Thrones, which is coming back in April. Other podcasts I do on the network are Bullets, Brothels, and Bots, a Westworld podcast, which is now in hiatus until the next season of Westworld comes out. But we do have Searching for American Gods podcast, which will probably be coming out in 30 days from now, because American Gods Season 2 is about to come on in February. The last podcast I do is Halloween Boutique Psychotronic Reviews, which is a podcast where I discuss and critique various independent or midnight movies from boutique label discs, and basically review them, so let folks know whether or not it's a good film, whether the quality of the release is good, HD transfer and whatnot, and discuss also with the extras on the discs. So those are the podcasts. You can find us at darkdiscussions.com, also Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Philip, for coming on the show, and have a good day.
All right. Thanks a lot, Anthony, and we'll talk to you later.
Want to find out the latest guest announcements and news regarding Anthony T's Horror Show? You can follow Anthony T's Horror Show on these social media platforms. Facebook at www.facebook.com/Anthony T's Horror Show. On Twitter at www.twitter.com/Anthony T's Horror, and Instagram at www.instagram.com/Anthony T's Horror Show. For my film recommendation this week, I'm recommending a film that recently was released on Blu-ray from Music Video Distribution on their MVD Rewind Collection label, and it's also making its Blu-ray debut. Talking about Albert Pune's Nemesis. This is one of my favorite Albert Pune films. I've also loved his films Dollman, Arcade, and Vicious Lips. This one is pretty much an action-packed sci-fi film with a who's who of B-movie stars, including Oliver Gruner, Tim Thomerson, Byron James, Jackie Earle Haley, Thomas Jane, Thor Matthews, and Kari Hiroyuki Takawa. If I'm pronouncing it right. If I'm not, I apologize. So this film has pretty much a who's who of names you might recognize. Why I'm recommending this film? This film is an action-packed film from start to finish. Albert Pune does a great job making sure that the action is intense. He also makes sure that there's good performances, especially from Gruner and Thomerson in the film. It's really an action-packed film with a lot of great action set pieces. Nemesis is definitely a film you should check out. And the Blu-ray for the film is loaded. Literally loaded. You got the original theatrical cut. You have the director's cut of the film. And you also have the Japanese cut of the film with built-in Japanese subtitles. If that wasn't enough, you have new interviews from director Albert Pune and producer Eric Carson. This disc also has vintage featurettes, including behind the scenes The Making of Nemesis, an interview with Oliver Gruner, making of stunts and effects, making of visual effect, behind the scenes photo gallery, TV spot, and more. This is a very loaded disc that people should get, and for those fans who liked Nemesis 2, 3, and 4, don't worry, those films will also be making its Blu-ray debut on March 26th, so definitely pick up Nemesis. It's definitely an action-packed sci-fi film with good performances, action-packed scenes, and good direction from Albert Pune. Definitely pick up Nemesis, as Nemesis is my film recommendation for this episode. What's happening on my blog website, Anthony T's Horror Chamber? Not much, but I started to post news again on the site, so catch that. And I will be reviewing a film shortly for the site. I haven't decided which film I'm going to review. I haven't even decided if it's going to be a video review or a regular review. So keep your eye out on Anthony T's Horror Chamber, which you can visit on the web at thehorrorchamber.blogspot.com. I want to thank you for listening to this episode. Have a good day and support indie horror.